So I was on vacation and I was talking to somebody around a fire at night, and we were just having a good conversation, but he stopped me and he said, "Wow, you really think about time weird, don't you?" And it was interesting. We weren't actually talking about time management or any of those other things, but in the course of the conversation, it had kind of come up in the way that I thought about trade-offs and some other stuff. And I took that as a really big compliment, even if he, didn't mean it that way, because it made me think back to about 7 years ago when I was having a conversation with one of my mentors at the time, and he brought up one of the most important shifts in my mindset and told me how out of all the resources that we have, our time, our energy, our money, that if I do not become a student of time and the impact that it has on the 4 types of wealth, my social, time, financial, and health wealth, he said, then I will be missing out on some of the biggest returns that I could have in all 4 of those areas in my life, and I'll never be able to get to the next level. So for the past 7 years since that conversation, I have really become a student of time, not just in my own life, but in the world, in how it works, and very specifically in all the ways that society is trying to take your time from you. And we talk about this a lot, in my mastermind, but a subset of time is attention, because I can dedicate time to being with my family. But if my attention during that time is on my phone, not on my family, then it's not exactly quality. In fact, I could probably do a lot of damage in my relationships with my family if I am just on my phone the entire time. So giving your time isn't enough. It has to be your time and attention. So as I talk about this, just understand that I'm not just talking about time, I'm talking about time and attention. Now, one of the things that I find was one of the largest contributors to my overall true wealth, all 4 categories, is when I really started to see time like money. If I have $100 sitting in my wallet and I'm going out for the day, then I only have $100 to spend. Let's assume I don't have credit cards and all that in this situation. So assuming I only have $100 to spend, and maybe I'm out shopping, or maybe I'm out, getting something to eat, whatever the case is, there is a finite amount. I am locked into that $100. I have no way of accessing any additional money. That's it. That's all I have. Well, if I go and I buy a shirt for $50, well, then that's a lot of other things that I've immediately priced myself out on. I can't buy anything for $51 or above now because that's all I have left. Well, the same thing happens with our time, but we don't tend to view it that way. I really don't like it when people start talking about funerals and people don't, you could die at any point in time, because that doesn't really work with people. Talking about the infinite is not particularly helpful. We are creatures who need boundaries. We work best when we have healthy limitations that are set on us. This is why, for people who have unlimited PTO offered by their companies, what you find in studies is that they actually use less PTO than people who have defined amounts, like, hey, you get 2-3 weeks off, because we don't do good with unlimited. We don't do good with complete, limitless freedom. We're simple creatures. We need healthy boundaries. So what I started realizing was that when I viewed time as this kind of infinite thing that just ended one day, and I had no way of knowing when that was, if I would get hit by a car tomorrow, if I'd live to see 100, it didn't really help me in how I was utilizing it. What really helped me was when I started viewing time like that $100 that I had in my wallet for the day. If I only have that much to spend, how am I going to spend it? And if I realized that every time I did spend my time on something, that I was saying no to a lot of other things, that's what really started to change it for me. So then all of a sudden I started picking up my phone and I started looking at my screen time analytics. And I knew it was going to be bad, when I really started paying attention to it and I really started logging and tracking, over the course of, first I did it for a week, then I did it for a month, then I did it for 90 days. It was really just trying to find areas like, if I was saving up for something, I'd go through a budget, maybe cut out of things I'm not using. I started doing the same thing, and I was using a time budget essentially. and figuring out, okay, well, how could I get an extra 30 minutes a day back here, 15 minutes, or how could I reallocate this time to do something a little more beneficial? And over the course of those 90 days, this was about 7 years ago, over the course of those 90 days, my mindset around how wasteful I was. I mean, I thought I was stressed. I thought I was busy. I thought I had too much going on. I had to tell people no to things because I'm like, I just don't have any time. It was one of the biggest lies that was holding me back in my life from getting the things that I really, really wanted. And yeah, there's really simple things that we can all jump to, like social media and doom scrolling, which is obviously a huge time suck. How much time you're watching TV. Like, yeah, those are the obvious ones. We can jump to those. And I still get on social media from time to time outside of work purposes. And I still watch a little TV here and there. But there's a cap on it. And I am heavily aware of how much time I am spending and dedicating to that. And when I do sit down and I watch a show for an hour, I am aware of the fact that I am giving up other things I could be doing that may be more beneficial for that hour. So I don't watch crappy TV shows and I don't watch just any kind of movie or whatever anymore. I have to know from other people that it's good, that it's really good, because I love movies and I love TV shows. And I used to just take a risk on different things, but I don't do that anymore because I know how much time is valuable. And I want to make sure that even if it is for entertainment purposes, even if I am just kind of, relaxing on the couch and trying to decompress from the day, I want to know that it's going to be something that I'm going to truly value. I don't have time to watch something that I'm just going to sit here and go, oh man, like I should have turned that off halfway through. So if you start thinking about money like it is something finite that you have to spend, and you only have not even 24 hours. You have 18 hours max, okay? 18 hours a day max is what you really have to spend, because minimum 6 hours, all the way up to 8 hours is what you need to spend sleeping to stay healthy. Minimum 6 hours. So if we really go and we look at it as like, 16 hours is what you have to spend. We'll put the other two and, that's just travel time or flux or whatever. Really break that down. Really do a time audit. Okay, when I wake up in the morning, this is what I do. Okay, this is my routine. Then I got to go drop off the kids. Okay, well, that's taking like 30 minutes, getting them where they need to go. Okay, well, then, I get started with my day, and then I'm doing work stuff. And then I come home, and then I'm picking up kids, and then I'm doing, this, and that from this time. And then they go to bed. And then during that time, I normally tend to do this. When you really start breaking that down into 15-minute increments, that's what I encourage people to do. Break it down to 15-minute increments. You're going actually to see a lot of time that you spend kind of putzing around. It's not particularly intentional. Because if you look at it at that microscopic of a level and you go, well, yeah, these 15 minutes, I'm not really doing anything. Okay. Well, now what we can do is we can look at our goals. We can look at the things that are important to us. We can look at our values. And then we can start intentionally putting something into that little 5, 10, 15-minute time slot. Can you sit down and just do breathing exercises for 5 minutes before you start your workday? Can you, on the 15 minutes in between dropping your kid off from school and getting to work, turn on a podcast that is specific to helping you develop in a skill or a value that you have? Maybe you're working on trying to be a better spouse, and you want to listen to, a therapy or a marriage podcast. Maybe you need that time to learn a new skill for your job. So you're listening to an audiobook or podcast on that. You are now trading this dead time that just kind of gets wasted. Maybe you're scrolling while driving, even though you shouldn't be. But now it's being turned into something that's intentional, that is moving you towards the things that you said are important to you. So I highly encourage you to go through. I actually found that printing, I love digital, don't get me wrong, but I found that printing off a sheet of paper and then just writing down every 15 minutes. Notebook paper is already lined, you can do that too, but you can get online and just download, a little time sheet. And if you just really start blocking off, specifically on the weekends, and really focus, I know there's not a lot, for many people, there's not a lot of wiggle room in between your 8 to 5, but you do get a lunch break. And, that 5 to 9, that's really what tends to make your future. Not the 8 to 5, like that's going to get you somewhere, but the 5 to 9 is really what's going to accelerate it. Okay. So that's what I would encourage you to do, is just to start looking at time as, like you would with money. It's something that you have to spend. And the question is, what are you spending it on and what kind of return are you getting for it? I'm not going to sit here and tell you don't ever watch TV again. Don't get off of all social media. If you want to do those things, that's fine. That's great. You'll have a lot more time. But inevitably what ends up happening is that we still need to find things that we enjoy in life, and we'll end up wasting it in other things. What really matters is not necessarily cutting out time, but it's the combination of cutting out time and then reallocating that time to something of value that moves us towards the things that we want in life. That was the big trick for me. And when I really started looking at it that way, it just changed everything. It really did. It changed the relationships I had. There were certain people I just stopped calling, stopped texting. I wasn't being rude. If they, got in touch with me or something, I'd, talk back to them. But I was just like, this relationship isn't going anywhere. The time spent with this person is time that's being taken away from the people that really matter to me at this stage of my life. My kids, my wife, my parents, my really close friends that I have. And by viewing that level of time and putting, this precious label on it, I just realized that I had to protect it more. So I just kind of naturally cut people out of my life. And, then again, when I placed this priority on my time, there were just things I stopped doing. I was like, well, I like doing that. It's not my favorite thing. It's not even my top 5 favorite things. So I'm just not going to do that. And when I stopped doing that, okay, I got an extra hour a week back. Oh, well, cool. That was awesome. There was a TV show I was watching. I was like, oh, I kind of like it. There's 3 more seasons to go. It's not the greatest TV show I ever watched, but I guess I really don't need it. So I just stopped watching that TV show. And so there's things that you're doing right now that probably don't even mean that much to you, but you are just using it to fill time, because that's what I was doing. We just fill time. That's what we do now. We don't have rocking chair moments anymore. We don't go out to the patio and sit down and, with a cup of Joe and just sit there and dwell on life. We don't give our brains space to think. And that was the other thing that I think that was a really huge change for me. When I started to intentionally have these rocking chair moments where I would just put my phone in another room on Do Not Disturb where nobody could get in touch with me. The kids were in bed, maybe even my wife was asleep or reading a book or something like that. And I could just sit alone and be with my thoughts for 15 to 20 minutes at night. The clarity that it gave me, the memory that it gave me. Things would come flooding in all of a sudden. And I was like, oh man, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, did I follow up with that person? It was unbelievable what happened when I just gave my brain space to operate instead of having to take in new information constantly. Because that's what we're doing with a lot of our time, isn't it? We are just going in just constant information overload. This is why it's so powerful to write things down. One of the stats that we're constantly talking about is how the simple act of writing down your goals increases your chance of success by 40%. It's because of this process our brain goes through called encoding when we write something down, and it moves things from our short-term memory into our long-term memory. And that's powerful because our short-term memories are shot right now. People can't remember major headlines or things that they did 3 weeks ago. The politicians actually know this, which is why they don't apologize for things anymore, and they just lie about it because they know nobody's going to remember in 3 months or 3 weeks. And then on top of it, there's so much content out there that even if somebody pulls it up, other people probably won't even know. So time is, like I said, and our attention is so overly spent in the short term that it's just crushing how we utilize it. So if you really want to start accelerating your wealth, if you really want to start changing certain behaviors, if you really want to start taking back your life, you need to start changing your relationship with how you utilize and how you view your time on a daily basis. And the other thing that I'll say is that for me, having the clarity, having extreme clarity, not just I have a pretty good idea, but knowing exactly what it was that I wanted for my life at that stage in time, 7 years ago when I was having this conversation with my mentor, knowing that, okay, yeah, I need to cut and free up my time. If I would have done that first, I don't know if I would have stuck with it as long. But because, thanks again to many great mentors I've had over my life, I had such a clear view of where I was going. I knew exactly what it is I was trying to accomplish. I understood my why. Because I had clarity around those things, when I did start to reevaluate my relationship with time and where I was putting my attention, then I really saw how wasteful it was. Then I was really like, man, I could have been doing this to move me towards XYZ goals, but instead I was doing that. Man, what a waste in contrast when I compare, when I compare them up against each other. So that's what I would say. If you're going to do this exercise and you're going to kind of time audit yourself, do it in 15-minute blocks, different things like that, that's great. You should definitely do that. But before you do that, just remember, start with the end. Where is it that you're trying to go? What do you want for your life? Why do you want it? And then how are you going to get it? When you start with those kinds of questions and you have really good answers for them, then when you go back and you do kind of a time audit and you evaluate how you're utilizing it, then it'll be so much more powerful and impactful because you'll be able to see that and go, man, yeah, I am really wasting time with this person on that show, doom scrolling social media, helping out on something that I have absolutely no passion for and I'm just kind of doing because I was asked to do it. And then you will be able to take that and say, I'm going to take all this, that extra hour a day I get, that extra 3 hours a week, whatever it ends up being, and I'm going to start putting it towards these things that are meaningful to me. And that, I promise you, will start to increase the 4 types of wealth in your life pretty much instantly.